if someone's words make you doubt your reality, and you begin to feel small, confused, or dependent in their presence. This is not connection, this is control. Many people mistake intensity for intimacy, but the energy of a narcissist does not expand you, it contracts you. It makes you shrink yourself to fit into their approval. And this is their most clever trick. They don't always use aggression. They use attention, they use praise, they use confusion, not to lift you, but to own you. So today, let us look, not just with our eyes, but with our inner awareness, because the danger of narcissistic manipulation is not only in what they do, it is in what they train you to ignore, your intuition, your boundaries, your body's discomfort. Once you begin to return to your breath, to your body, and to your clear perception, you are no longer a mirror for their ego. You become your own center. And this, my friend, is when the control ends. There is a profound truth we often overlook, that attention is life energy. In many ancient traditions, attention is considered the seed of reality. What you give your attention to, you nourish. In the hands of a wise person, attention becomes a tool for growth, connection, and healing. But in the presence of a manipulator, especially a narcissist, your attention becomes a weapon. Not one aimed outward, but one slowly turned inward, used to erode your clarity, your peace, and eventually your identity. When you're in the presence of a narcissist, you may feel a strange intensity, like the room has shifted, like your sense of self has been pulled slightly off center. You may find yourself constantly thinking about them. What do they need? How are they feeling? What do they mean by what they just said? You might replay conversations long after they end. You scan your own words for flaws, worrying you said too much or not enough. This is no accident. This is not affection. It is a psychological mechanism called attentional capture, and narcissists are masterful at it. Modern neuroscience tells us that what we repeatedly pay attention to shapes the very wiring of our brains. The neurons that fire together, wire together. If you are constantly giving attention to someone who subtly manipulates or criticizes you, your brain begins to prioritize their needs, their emotions, their moods, not your own. Over time, your internal reference point shifts. You no longer ask, "What do I feel?" You ask, "How will they react if I say this?" You no longer trust your own intuition. Instead, you look to them for validation, like a compass that only spins, never points north. A woman once shared her story with me. She was in a relationship with a man who was charming, intelligent, and always said the right things. But she noticed something strange. Every time they had an argument, he would never directly insult her. Instead, he would ask questions that made her doubt herself. "Are you sure you remember it that way?" Or, "You always get too emotional when you're tired." Over time, she began questioning her memory, her reactions, even her sanity. And yet, he never raised his voice, never broke a plate, never called her a name. Still, her sense of self began to dissolve. Why? Because her attention had been hijacked. The brain treats uncertainty like a problem to solve. If someone gives you 100% affection or 100% rejection, the mind quickly adapts. But if someone gives you 50%, withholds the other 50%, and leaves you wondering, you stay hooked. The loop never closes. This is not love. This is a cognitive trap designed by those who understand how emotion and attention are connected. In traditional Eastern philosophy, there's a concept called the monkey mind. The part of our awareness that jumps from one thing to another, always chasing, always restless. Narcissists do not calm this mind. They provoke it. They keep it in motion. The more unstable your attention becomes, the more stable their control becomes. The irony is painful. You think you are working harder to make the relationship better. But what you are actually doing is feeding the system that traps you. In Shaolin practice, we are taught to still the mind by anchoring it in breath, movement, and presence. This is not just to cultivate peace, it is to reclaim power. Because when you learn to hold your attention, no one can steal it. You become the gatekeeper of your own awareness. And this is what a narcissist fears the most. Not your anger, not your confrontation, but your quiet clarity. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt yourself shrink in someone's presence? Not physically, but energetically. You begin to speak more cautiously. You choose your words like a diplomat. You begin to anticipate their moods before they even enter the room. This is not because you are weak. It is because your attention has been trained to move toward them rather than toward yourself. And once that happens, your emotional compass no longer points to your truth. It points to their reactions. A simple but powerful exercise: the next time you are with someone who makes you feel emotionally unstable, do nothing. Observe your breath. Observe your bodily sensations. Where is the tension? Where is the tightness? Ask yourself, am I holding space for myself in this moment? You may notice something surprising. The moment you begin to turn inward and reclaim your attention, the manipulative energy begins to resist. They may escalate. They may provoke. They may accuse you of being distant, cold, or uncaring. But this is only a reaction to losing control over the one thing they truly value: your focus. Attention is a mirror. If you hold it up to someone who is whole, they will meet you with openness. If you hold it up to someone who is fractured, they will try to shatter it. Narcissists don't want to see their true reflection. They want to control yours. And so we move to the next layer of understanding. Once your attention is drawn outward, the narcissist begins the process of destabilizing your internal reference points. This is not always loud or violent. In fact, it is often quiet, eerily quiet. Confusion becomes the weapon. And confusion, when prolonged, leads to emotional fog. Emotional fog is not simply a lack of clarity. It is a subtle rewiring of the nervous system. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, begins to fire more often. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for logical decision-making, becomes overwhelmed. The body enters a low-grade stress response that becomes chronic. This is what we call limbic hijack. In such a state, your decisions are no longer based on wisdom or truth. They are based on fear and survival. A man once came to a monastery retreat. He was in his mid-50s, quiet, and seemed deeply reflective. After several days, he opened up and shared that he had left a 20-year marriage. His wife, he explained, had never hit him, never yelled at him, and never left him. But he said he felt like a ghost in his own home. She always made me feel like I misunderstood things, like I was too sensitive, or that I was forgetting what actually happened. But the more I tried to explain, the more she would twist my words. I started recording our conversations, just to prove to myself I wasn't losing my mind. What he experienced is known in psychology as gaslighting. It is not just lying. It is the deliberate erosion of someone's perception of reality. Narcissists don't need to scream or threaten. They just need to ask the right question in the wrong tone. They just need to withhold just enough of the truth. They just need to make you explain yourself over and over, until your words feel meaningless even to you. In traditional Taoist teachings, the concept of Wu Wei, effortless action, reminds us that clarity comes not from pushing harder but from stepping back. When someone creates emotional fog, your instinct may be to prove yourself, to fight for truth, to explain. But sometimes the most powerful action is to observe silently, to let the fog reveal itself for what it is. Because in the stillness, the truth becomes visible. Imagine standing in a forest at night. You have a lantern, but every time you try to shine it on the path, someone gently pushes your hand to the side. You adjust and they move it again. Eventually, you stop trying to see the path at all. You simply follow their footsteps, hoping they know the way. This is what narcissistic confusion feels like. It makes you abandon your lantern, your perception, and walk blindly behind someone who leads only in circles. This is why it is vital to rebuild your connection to your inner compass. One of the first steps is to return to embodiment. Sit with your emotions without naming them. Let your breath slow down. Let your feet touch the floor. Ask yourself not, what should I do? But what is true for me in this moment? A simple story from martial arts. A student asked the master how to avoid being thrown in a sparring match. The master replied, "Don't lose your center. The moment you lean too far forward, you will be pulled. The moment you lean too far back, you will be pushed." Life with a narcissist is much like sparring with someone who never plays fair. If you lean forward, trying to please them, they withdraw. If you lean back, protecting yourself, they attack. But if you stand firm in your center, their movements lose power. It is not easy to do this, especially when you care for the person, especially when love is mixed with pain and hope with fear. But your first responsibility is not to save them. It is to return to yourself. Because once you can see clearly again, once the emotional fog lifts, you begin to realize something, that not all confusion is a flaw in your mind. Sometimes, it is the signal that someone else is trying to blind you. And that realization is the beginning of freedom. There is a certain kind of pain that does not come with bruises. It does not break the skin, nor does it shout loud enough to draw attention. Instead, it sinks quietly into the spirit, until one day, a person finds themselves questioning not just their relationship, but their worth. This kind of harm does not arrive with aggression. It arrives with the slow erosion of personal boundaries. And this, too, is one of the narcissist's most favored techniques. When a narcissist seeks to control, they do not always begin with conflict. They begin with closeness. They create a sense of intensity, of connection so strong that you may feel as if you found someone who finally sees you. They mirror your values. They reflect your dreams. They study your emotional terrain. But what seems like understanding is often strategic. It is the groundwork laid for what comes next. The subtle reprogramming of your boundaries, not by force, but through emotional enmeshment. To understand this dynamic, we must first revisit a principle of Eastern philosophy: everything seeks balance. The body, the breath, the mind, they all seek homeostasis. When one element becomes too dominant, the entire system is thrown into disarray. The same is true in relationships. When your emotional landscape becomes too entangled with another's, you begin to lose sight of where you end and they begin. This loss of distinction is what makes you vulnerable to manipulation. In the language of modern psychology, this is known as enmeshment. It occurs when your emotional well-being becomes overly dependent on someone else's mood, attention, or approval. In a healthy bond, two individuals retain their core integrity. They love, but they do not disappear into each other. But with a narcissist, love is replaced by a performance of closeness. One where your feelings are permitted only if they serve the script they are writing. One woman told me how she gradually stopped seeing her friends. "He never told me I couldn't," she said. But he would say things like, "I just thought we'd spend tonight together. I've had a hard week." Or he'd seem disappointed when I came home late from dinner with a friend. Over time, I started choosing him. Not because I was forced to, but because I wanted to avoid the guilt. The strange part is that I didn't even realize it was happening. I thought I was just being loving. This is not an uncommon story. It is the story of boundaries being crossed without confrontation. A narcissist's tactic is rarely to break your fence. It is to convince you that the gate should always remain open. They want you emotionally accessible at all times, ready to soothe their wounds, reflect their greatness, or absorb their frustrations. In time, your emotional resources are no longer yours to manage. They belong to the relationship. But in truth, they belong to them. In Shaolin training, one of the first lessons a disciple learns is the value of the stance, not just as a physical posture, but as a symbol of internal grounding. Your stance reflects your boundary. It says, "I am here, I am whole, I take up space." When that stance is compromised, when your foundation is shaken, every movement becomes uncertain. You become easier to sway, easier to exhaust, easier to control. From a physiological standpoint, boundary erosion leads to a chronic state of stress. The nervous system, when overexposed to emotional demand, shifts into sympathetic dominance, increased heart rate, shallow breath, and reduced immunity. These are not minor inconveniences. Over time, this state leads to burnout, depression, and illness. The body is not designed to be in constant service to another's emotions. It is designed to reflect the balance of your inner world. And when that world is ignored, the body speaks up, through fatigue, through tension, through disconnection. There's a story in the Zen tradition of a student who kept giving away his rice to feed others, believing it to be an act of compassion. His teacher observed him quietly for weeks, then finally said, "Compassion without wisdom is like pouring water into a cracked bowl. You will never be full enough to give from strength." Healthy compassion flows from a filled vessel. But when a narcissist erodes your boundaries, they turn your kindness into currency, something to spend, not something to share. How then do we begin to restore those boundaries? The first step is self-awareness, not just in the mind, but in the body. Begin to observe when you feel tension in conversation. Notice when you are saying yes while your inner self whispers no. Pay attention to the moments when you feel obligated rather than inspired to care for someone. These are the early signs that your internal compass has been overridden. The second step is returning to solitude, not as a retreat, but as a recalibration. In solitude, your own voice grows louder. You remember what you love, what you value, what brings you peace. Solitude is not loneliness, it is remembrance. And from this remembrance comes the strength to say, this is where I begin. This is where I end. There is no need to announce your boundaries with anger. In fact, the most powerful boundaries are often expressed in silence, in action, in the gentle but firm refusal to be overextended. A narcissist may resist this. They may accuse you of being distant, selfish, or uncaring. But their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to preserve the integrity of your own energy, because that energy is the root of all genuine connection. Once a person has lost their boundaries, they are more vulnerable to the next layer of narcissistic control, the cycle of idealization and devaluation. At first, the narcissist puts you on a pedestal. You are admired, adored, and made to feel exceptional. This is not because they see your true value, but because they sense your potential to serve their narrative. You are not loved for who you are. You are loved for what you represent to them. But the pedestal is not stable. It is designed to tilt. And when it does, when you express disagreement or show imperfection, the devaluation begins. The same person who once praised you now subtly criticizes you. They point out your flaws, not to help you grow, but to keep you uncertain, to keep you striving for approval that never fully arrives. This dynamic is deeply confusing. From a neurological perspective, it activates the same reward pathways as gambling. The brain becomes addicted to the hope of returning to the high of early idealization. You begin to believe that if you just act right, say the right thing, avoid the wrong tone, you can bring back the version of them that loved you. But that version was a performance. The real person is the one who punishes you for not being perfect. A man once came to a mindfulness retreat. He was tall, soft-spoken, and carried a kind of quiet sadness. Over tea, he shared, "She used to call me her soulmate. Said she'd never felt anything like what we had. But now, everything I do seems to disappoint her. She rolls her eyes. She says I'm too sensitive. But when I try to leave, she cries and says she can't live without me." He paused, looking into the distance. I don't know which version of her is real. This is the hallmark of the narcissistic bond. It is not based on authenticity. It is based on performance and punishment. You are rewarded for compliance and punished for authenticity. The result is a fractured self. One part of you clings to the love that was offered. The other part shrinks, afraid of triggering the devaluation. Over time, your internal state becomes one of vigilance. You are no longer living. You are monitoring. From the Shaolin perspective, such a state is the opposite of mastery. True mastery does not arise from tension. It arises from alignment. When you live in alignment with your core values, your energy flows freely. But when you contort yourself to earn love, your energy becomes blocked. You cannot move with grace if you are always second, guessing your step. You cannot speak with power if you are always editing your voice. There is an ancient saying, "The tree that bends too far to please the wind loses its root." You are not here to bend endlessly. You are here to stand rooted in truth, even if that truth costs you a relationship. Because no relationship that demands the loss of self is worth the price. One woman, years after leaving a narcissistic relationship, described it beautifully. "It took me months to stop hearing his voice in my head, but the day I made my own decisions without worrying what he would think, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not happiness, not excitement, just peace. It was like returning to myself." That is the gift of healing, not a life without pain, but a life with clarity. Clarity to see manipulation not as love, but as control. Clarity to understand that your value is not defined by how others treat you, but by how aligned you are with your own integrity. The cycle of idealization and devaluation can only continue if you remain emotionally dependent. That dependency is not your fault. It is the result of a system designed to create it. But the moment you recognize it, you begin to reclaim power. Not by fighting harder, not by demanding love, but by stepping back into your own center. Like the martial artist who does not block every strike, but simply steps aside, you begin to move from force to flow. you begin to see that not every invitation to conflict requires your response. Not every insult requires your defense. You begin to understand that the most powerful statement is not always made in words, but in choosing to walk away from what no longer honors your spirit. And this is where your true strength begins to surface. There is a unique kind of silence that follows certain conversations. It's not the silence of calm, nor the silence of contemplation. It is the silence of confusion, of dissonance, of a mind that feels twisted into knots by something that, on the surface, should have been simple. When someone walks away from a dialogue with a narcissist, they often do so with this kind of silence. Not because they have been shouted at or insulted directly, but because they have been spun, subtly, skillfully, into a place where they question what they felt, what they said, and whether their memory of events is even real. This is not miscommunication. This is manipulation by way of distortion, and at the heart of it lies a tactic so insidious that it leaves the strongest among us doubting ourselves. It is called gaslighting. Gaslighting is not merely lying. It is the repeated, intentional rewriting of your reality in a way that makes you doubt your perception, your judgment, and even your sanity. It's the narcissist's quiet weapon, not loud or visible like aggression, but slow and penetrating, like a drip of water that hollows stone. It begins with simple contradictions. You recall something they said the night before. They reply, "I never said that. You must be imagining it." You bring up something that hurt you. They respond, "You're too sensitive. That didn't happen like you think." These statements are not just defensive. They are designed to dismantle the structure of your mind. They do not argue with facts. They erase facts altogether and replace them with suggestion, doubt, and redefinition. The more you protest, the more you are framed as unstable. You become the problem. And eventually, if it continues long enough, you may begin to believe it. Psychologically, gaslighting functions by targeting a person's episodic memory, the aspect of the brain responsible for recalling specific events and details. When this part of your mind is repeatedly challenged or contradicted, your brain experiences cognitive dissonance, an uncomfortable tension between what you know and what you are being told. And when this happens often, the brain, in its search for relief, may choose to resolve the dissonance by adapting to the imposed narrative. You stop trusting yourself, not because your instincts are wrong, but because your instincts have been systematically dismissed. This is how control is established, not by chains but by confusion. You are no longer controlled by force. You are controlled by dependency. You depend on the narcissist to tell you what is true. You begin to seek their version of events as a compass, because your own inner compass has been magnetically distorted. In the Shaolin tradition, clarity is a foundational virtue. One cannot move fluidly through life or through combat without clarity of mind. And clarity is not simply about knowing what is true. It is about recognizing what is untrue, what is misleading, what carries hidden intent. This kind of clarity is not learned from books. It is cultivated through stillness, through introspection, and through the courage to sit with discomfort without rushing to resolve it. One of my students, a woman in her mid-40s, once shared a story that illustrated this principle well. "I spent years thinking I was overreacting," she said. "Every time I felt hurt, he'd say I was being dramatic, that I was too emotional, that I remembered things wrong. After a while, I stopped bringing things up altogether. I just kept them inside. But inside, the silence started to feel like poison." She paused, her eyes steady but soft. "It wasn't until I started journaling daily, writing things down as they happened, that I began to see a pattern. He was changing the story, and I wasn't crazy. I was being dismantled slowly, without ever being touched." This story is powerful because it reflects something deeply human: the desire to be understood, and the vulnerability that comes with that desire. When someone we love tells us we are wrong, not just about facts, but about feelings, we don't simply feel mistaken, we feel invisible. And when invisibility becomes a recurring experience, we lose touch with our own sense of identity. In Eastern philosophy, the mind is often likened to a mirror. It reflects reality clearly when it is still, undisturbed. But when shaken, or covered with dust, the reflection becomes distorted. Gaslighting shakes the mind constantly. It clouds the surface of awareness with noise, emotion, and doubt. But unlike external storms, this storm comes from within the very person we once trusted. What makes this tactic particularly dangerous is that it is often delivered with calmness. A narcissist does not need to shout to gaslight you. In fact, they are often most effective when they speak with serenity, even kindness. "I just want you to be okay," they'll say. "Maybe you're remembering things differently because you were upset." This kind of phrasing presents itself as care, but it functions as corrosion. It seems concerned for your well-being, but it subtly discredits your perception. This tactic is rooted in emotional invalidation, a powerful mechanism through which a person's inner world is quietly erased. Emotional invalidation does not scream, it whispers. It suggests that your sadness is an overreaction, that your anger is unjustified, that your joy is naive, and when practiced consistently, it reshapes the emotional landscape. You begin to feel ashamed for feeling. You begin to censor yourself preemptively. But the mind and heart are not designed for suppression. They are designed for expression, for honesty, for attunement to truth. And when they are denied that, a quiet form of inner violence takes place. It is the violence of internal exile, the feeling that even within your own mind, you are not safe. A man once described this experience to me with unexpected poetry. "It was like walking through fog inside a house I built," he said. "I knew I should feel at home, but I couldn't see clearly. And every time I tried to turn on the lights, she'd say, there was never a switch there." What he described was not confusion. It was epistemic erosion, the loss of confidence in one's own ability to know. This erosion, once set in motion, does not only affect the relationship in which it began, it follows you into new connections, into decision-making, into the very core of how you trust your instincts. It is a wound that bleeds slowly, in thoughts that begin with, "Maybe I'm just too," and "What if I misunderstood?" And yet, even this kind of erosion can be healed. Not quickly, not through confrontation, but through reconnection with inner stillness, through ritual, through presence, through practices that re-establish the voice within you that whispers truth even when no one else believes it. This is why journaling is powerful. It is not simply recording events. It is preserving clarity against distortion. It is giving your memory a home, a written record that cannot be rewritten by someone else's narrative. This is also why meditation matters. In the silence of breath, the mind returns to equilibrium. The nervous system resets. The inner voice, drowned for so long by external noise, begins to speak again. And often, its first message is simple: you are not crazy. You are waking up. In Shaolin training, there is a practice known as stillness within motion. It refers to the capacity to maintain internal stability even while the external world moves chaotically around you. This is the discipline that protects against gaslighting. Not the external stance, but the internal one. When you know yourself deeply, when you have sat with your own thoughts, questioned your own motives, observed your emotions without fear, then no one else can take that knowing away from you. This inner knowing becomes your sanctuary, and from that sanctuary, a new kind of relationship becomes possible, not one based on control or distortion, but on mutual witnessing. Because at its heart, that is what true intimacy requires. Two people who are willing to see and be seen without disguise, without manipulation, without rewriting each other's reality for comfort. One woman, after years of gaslighting, began a small ritual. Each morning, she stood in front of her mirror and named 5 things she knew to be true about herself. "It felt silly at first," she said, "but slowly it became sacred. I was reclaiming my own voice, and over time, that voice grew louder than his." This is the essence of recovery from gaslighting. Not vengeance, not confrontation, but clarity. And from that clarity comes the ability to discern, to sense when someone's words carry truth or distortion, to feel in your body the dissonance that arises when something spoken does not match what is real. In relationships, this discernment is not cold. It is compassionate, because it allows you to remain open without becoming vulnerable to deception. It allows you to extend grace without abandoning yourself. It allows you to listen without surrendering your truth. As you walk the path of emotional mastery, you begin to realize that your greatest tool is not your intellect, nor your history, nor your ability to argue. It is your stillness, because from stillness arises clarity, and from clarity wisdom, and wisdom cannot be gaslit. The narcissist's tactic of mental distortion succeeds only when your mind is ungrounded. When you return to the ground of your own being, their fog lifts, and what once felt like confusion begins to appear as it truly is a strategy, not a reality. And this realization, though subtle, marks the beginning of transformation. There is a moment in every relationship, whether romantic, familial, or professional, where your body knows the truth long before your mind catches up. A subtle tension begins to build. Your shoulders tighten when they walk into the room. Your breath shortens when their name lights up your phone. There's a slight hesitation before you speak, a quiet scan for danger before you share a thought, a story, a concern. It is not fear exactly, it is vigilance. And vigilance is the body's response to unpredictability, especially when unpredictability wears the mask of affection. One of the most destabilizing tactics a narcissist employs is the cycle of idealization and devaluation. It is the emotional equivalent of a roller coaster, thrilling, addictive, and ultimately exhausting. This tactic is not accidental. It is a deliberate design to hook you emotionally, to make you feel simultaneously needed and replaceable, cherished and inadequate. It is not love. It is a performance of love, orchestrated for control. In the beginning, they place you on a pedestal. You are everything they've been searching for. They study your likes and dislikes, mirror your values, echo your dreams. This stage feels intoxicating. You feel deeply seen, appreciated, even elevated. They offer compliments so specific they feel like understanding. They speak of fate, of destiny, of the uniqueness of your bond. And because humans are wired for connection, you respond. We are not built for isolation. We are built for resonance. Neuroscience tells us that when we experience mutual attunement, when someone reflects our emotions back to us, when we feel understood and valued, our brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. We feel safe, we feel connected. We feel that this is the person we can finally trust. But in a narcissistic dynamic, this sense of safety is not meant to last. It is merely the setup for the fall. The shift begins slowly. One day, something you say is met with disapproval. You're too sensitive, too needy, not supportive enough. Then comes the coldness, the subtle withdrawal, the long silences after conflict. You feel that you've been demoted, but you can't quite explain why. You try harder. You explain yourself more. You apologize for your tone, your timing, your feelings. You become careful. This is the devaluation stage. And it is not random. It serves to destabilize your inner sense of worth, to make your emotional safety dependent on their approval again. It creates a pattern of reward and punishment that activates the brain's addiction circuitry. The same mechanism that draws gamblers back to the slot machine is at play in these relationships. Intermittent reinforcement, unpredictable rewards, creates stronger attachment than consistent kindness ever could. One kind word after days of silence feels like salvation. One small gesture after emotional withdrawal feels like hope. But it is not hope. It is conditioning. The cycle is a closed loop. Idealize, devalue, repeat. And it often ends with discard, not because you failed, but because your ability to see the game became a threat. Or, more cruelly, because your reaction to the emotional whiplash is used as justification to label you as unstable. You've changed, they say. You're too much. I can't deal with your emotions. But it is not your change they fear. It is your awakening. In Shaolin philosophy, we are taught the concept of Wu Wei, effortless action. It is the practice of responding to life without force, without resistance, without overcorrection. When applied to relationships, Wu Wei invites us to observe the energy of interactions rather than the words alone. Because the energy never lies. You might hear, I love you, yet feel tension in your chest. You might hear, I just want what's best for you, and feel your stomach knot. The mind can be deceived by language, the body cannot. And in these cycles, the body often begins to break down. Sleep becomes disrupted, anxiety becomes chronic. You find yourself walking on eggshells, rehearsing conversations in your head before they happen, censoring your joy in case it invites punishment. I once worked with a man in his early 50s who had just ended a 10-year relationship. He described the first few months as a dream. His partner was attentive, loving, endlessly supportive. She made me feel like the center of the universe, he said. Like finally someone saw all the good in me. But as time passed, her warmth began to flicker. She began withdrawing affection after minor disagreements. She criticized him in public, but apologized in private. When he confronted her, she'd say he was imagining things, being too sensitive. The deeper he fell into the cycle, the more he lost touch with himself. I didn't recognize who I was anymore, he said. I started becoming smaller just to keep the peace. I stopped laughing around her. I stopped being me. His story is not unique. It is a quiet epidemic of emotional manipulation masked as passion. The narcissist's attention becomes a currency, given, withheld, and used to shape behavior, and the cost is authenticity. This cycle also erodes boundaries. In healthy relationships, boundaries are not barriers, they are bridges. They create clarity, mutual respect, and a space where two individuals can meet without losing themselves. But in narcissistic dynamics, boundaries are seen as threats. They are criticized as selfishness, interpreted as rejection, or ignored altogether. And over time, the person being devalued begins to abandon those boundaries in hopes of regaining connection. But connection that requires the loss of self is not connection, it is control. In traditional Shaolin training, before one learns the external forms, one must cultivate internal stability. We call this rooting. Without rooting, every movement becomes erratic. Power is lost, balance collapses. In relationships, rooting is knowing who you are when no one is watching. It is the daily discipline of returning to center, even when someone else's storm tries to pull you off course. When a person alternates between idealizing and devaluing you, the first thing to remember is this: their behavior speaks of them, not of you. Their praise is not proof of your value, and their withdrawal is not a measure of your worth. The narcissist cycle is not a mirror, it is a mask. It takes deep inner work to see this clearly, because for many people, especially those with histories of emotional neglect, this cycle feels familiar, even comforting. It mirrors childhood patterns where love was inconsistent, where approval had to be earned, where peace depended on the moods of others. The nervous system becomes wired to chase affection rather than receive it, and the chase, over time, feels like love. But love does not confuse, it clarifies. Love does not punish, it protects. Love does not erase your boundaries, it honors them. The journey to emotional maturity involves re-educating the nervous system. It requires daily practices that ground you back into truth. Truth that is not dependent on someone else's opinion. For some, this practice is meditation. For others, it is walking in nature, breathing deeply, moving the body until it remembers stillness. But for all, it is a return, a homecoming to the self that no longer begs for crumbs, but waits patiently for nourishment. One woman, a therapist who had once been caught in this cycle, shared how she healed. I began writing letters to myself every time he idealized me, and again every time he devalued me, she said. Eventually, I saw the pattern on paper. It was the same cycle with different words. Seeing it broke the spell. Writing creates distance. It transforms emotion into observation, and observation over time becomes liberation. In every interaction, there is an energetic transaction. We exchange more than words. We exchange presence, attention, emotional currency. In narcissistic relationships, this exchange is one-sided. You give, they take. You open, they withdraw. And the more you bend, the more they demand. But there is a limit to how much the soul can bend without breaking. This is where self-mastery begins, not in controlling others, but in recognizing what you can no longer accept. In seeing the pattern not as personal, but as programming, and then stepping outside of it. In Eastern philosophy, we speak often of balance, yin and yang, the dance of opposites. But balance does not mean tolerating chaos. It means restoring harmony. It means choosing relationships that reflect, not distort, your essence. When someone alternates between making you feel like they're everything and then treating you like nothing, ask yourself who benefits from your confusion, who gains when you are unsure, and what would it mean to choose clarity over intensity? Intensity is not love. Intensity is fire. It burns quickly, brightly, and leaves ashes. True love is warmth. It sustains, it nourishes. It remains even when the moment is quiet. To break the cycle of idealization and devaluation is to reclaim your rhythm. To choose steadiness over drama. To learn that the highest form of love is not the one that sweeps you off your feet, but the one that allows you to stand tall. And when you do stand tall, something profound happens. You stop being seduced by the highs. You stop fearing the lows. and you begin to seek what is real. When the mask of affection falls, when the game of confusion loses its grip, what remains is the truth, not just about the other person, but about yourself. This entire journey, through the subtle manipulation of guilt, the fog of gaslighting, the unpredictability of emotional highs and lows, and the erosion of your boundaries, has never been solely about them. It has always been an invitation to return to you, to your breath, to your silence, to your strength. In Shaolin philosophy, we do not rush toward transformation. We sit with discomfort. We allow the truth to echo in the chambers of the heart, and we move only when stillness gives birth to clarity. If someone needs to control you to feel secure, that is not a reflection of your weakness. It is the evidence of their inner emptiness. The narcissist's favorite tricks, idealization, devaluation, guilt, isolation, are not born of power, but of fear. Fear of being truly seen. Fear of authentic connection. Fear of surrendering control. But you, who have seen behind the illusion, who have awakened to the patterns, have a choice, not a reaction, a choice. You can choose to stop chasing approval. You can choose to reconnect with your own energy. You can choose to walk away not with hatred, but with wisdom. Not every battle is worth fighting. Not every apology needs to be spoken. And not every relationship must be preserved at the expense of your peace. There is great power in stillness, in walking away without chaos, in closing the door not with bitterness, but with understanding. True self-mastery is not found in avoiding pain, but in no longer needing it to prove your strength. It is not in controlling others, but in becoming unshakably rooted in your own being. You do not have to run from narcissists with fear in your heart. You can walk away with silence in your step, with grace in your breath, with peace as your companion. Because the most powerful response to manipulation is clarity, and the most powerful protection is presence. And the most powerful truth is that you are already enough. Remember, your energy is sacred. Your time is precious. Your spirit is not a battlefield. Let those who trade in confusion find their silence elsewhere. You, warrior of self-awareness, walk forward, not just free, but whole.